My old PS3 is broken, but in this video we are going to fix it and make it better than ever. Stay with me. The PlayStation 3 was a very divisive console of the 7th generation, with many arguing that its counterpart, the Xbox 360, was a far better option. But today, through various modifications and enhancements that we're going to do together, I'm going to show you why that was wrong in the late 2000s and why this console is more relevant than ever in 2025. The PS3 launched in November of 2006 in North America and Japan, and its launch was a rocky one, to say the least. They were extremely scarce to come by, and if you found one, you had to be willing to pay. The original MSRP was $599 US, which if we adjust for inflation is nearly $1,000. That is a huge price to pay for a new console, especially one that didn't have a lot of games that were making headlines at the time. Over time though, the production prices started to come down, and some of those savings were passed on to the consumer, and the console really started to hit its stride. Games were absolutely beautiful looking, and thanks to the powerful cell broadband architecture on the inside, they were able to push the limits of graphics far further than that of the Xbox 360. With this, we received generation-defining games like the Uncharted series and The Last of Us, all of which are still very relevant today. So with all this, after modding my PS Vita a few weeks back and seeing just how capable that became, I figured it was about time to dust off my childhood PS3 and see just how far this console could be pushed. There's one problem though. The console's broken. Well, at least the Blu-ray laser is. So as we can see now, the game has stopped being able to actually load anything from the disc. So now we're just running off of what we have in RAM at this point. The issue with these old fat PS3s was that they were rather prone to failure. I do have to give this one credit though, as when I was looking through the firmware, I found that it has over 5,000 hours of runtime. And to be honest, that's pretty impressive. One of the main failures here was with the disk drive. And in my case, it's an overheating problem, where once the console has been running for around 10 minutes, the optical laser heats up and is no longer able to read the discs. At this point, we get the issue that I'm about to show you, where the game files are in RAM, but no new files are able to be read through. So how do we solve this? Well, by jailbreaking the console and loading games directly onto the hard drive, bypassing the Blu-ray drive entirely. I did look into replacing the optical drive, but to be honest, a lot of the replacements end up failing as well, and it just seemed like a pretty fruitless effort. And on what hard drive are we installing the games, I hear you ask? The original slow spinning disk that only had 80 gigabytes of capacity? No, certainly not. We will use this SATA SSD, which is going to more than 5x our internal capacity, all while making games load faster and the console operate snappier overall. The install is really simple. You simply pop off this tray, unscrew the drive, pull it out, replace it with the new one, and get a fresh copy of the latest console firmware from Sony's official website. And now that we're back on the XMB landing page, we are ready to jailbreak. There are tons of really good guides on how to do this online, so I'm not going to recreate all the steps here, but I will give an overview for sure. To be honest, the process of jailbreaking this console is very simple. There are a few things to look out for, like compatible hardware versions, and knowing what kind of PS3 you actually have, like the original fat one that we have here, the slim, and then the super slim, with the super slim being impossible to jailbreak altogether. At least today. I'm sure that may change in the future. Anyway, first we have to back up the flash memory in case of failure. And remember, always do this at your own risk. There's always a chance of irreversibly bricking your console during this process. Small chance, but it can happen. Then we reflash the memory with a custom firmware. All these steps take a relatively long time given how old the hardware is, but be patient, it will complete. Then we install the jailbreak onto the console through the normal process of installing an update, with our custom firmware loaded onto a USB drive for install. And we are done. Now we can load a whole suite of Homebrew applications to get the most out of our console. The list is quite literally endless on what you could do with this, so I'm going to stick to the most popular ones to start. At the top there is PKGI, which allows you to download games that you already own directly onto your console's hard drive. Remember, games that you already own. And the great part about this one is everything happens directly on the console. So there's no need to grab files from your PC every time you want to install a new game. Next, we have the Apollo Save tool. This is super cool for modifying your save files or even downloading a 100% completion save so you can mess around the game without spending tens of hours in it ahead of time. I always remember playing Dead Island and people having these crazy modded weapons in the game when you play it online, which basically broke the game entirely. This is how you did that. So that is super cool. Next, we have the PSN patch, which allows you to play online when your console is jailbroken. But with this one, I'm gonna actually go ahead and advise against using this, as you never know if Sony one day wants to come through and randomly do a blanket ban of anyone playing online with modded firmware. Seems highly unlikely, but you never know. So I would say it's best to avoid online play with this one altogether. Another big one is Black Box FTP or another FTP alternative. This allows you to use the file transfer protocol between your PC and your PS3 to make sending files back and forth far easier. And trust me, after pulling the USB drive out of my console for the 20th time, this was very nice for a change. And the last one I'm going to cover is Artemis. With this one being pretty similar to Apollo like we covered earlier, but it has a much wider library of cheats that you can apply to your games. So a ton of options here. Think of this like a way to access all of those classic PS2 cheats that we used to have, but on more modern format games. Again, like everything else, definitely don't use these online. Another big thing to cover is the Ultimate Toolbox. And this is super worthwhile to install if you put a custom firmware on your console. It allows for a bunch of modifications, especially in terms of customizing the look of your XMB. You could also download a lot of firmware patches directly from the console. So this provides a kind of nice one-stop shop if you want to jailbreak your console and then never really connect it to your PC again. Also, if you just so happen to have a PS3 with a working Blu-ray drive, unlike mine, you can do something really cool with the games that you already have on disc, and that is fully backing up the entirety of the game directly onto your console. I personally love that this is an option, as it could get annoying to dig through a large library of physical media. That may just be me, but it's really cool that it's an option nonetheless. And if you upgrade your storage with a large half terabyte drive like I did, you're going to be able to put a lot of games on your console. Because unlike today, where some games could literally be hundreds of gigabytes, most of these were between only 5 to 10 gigabytes. So now we have our game installed. How do they even play? To be honest, they play just as you'd expect from this generation. The PS3 was an era of pushing the limits of what is possible from a graphic standpoint, with much less emphasis on how the games actually perform. As a result, most of these games are going to be running at a target 30 FPS, with frames often dipping far lower than this. When you're used to 60 FPS or even higher refresh rate going up to 240, this kind of blows. But it does not necessarily mean that the console is bad. You just have to be able to appreciate the tech that was available at the time. And in a way, it is really amazing that this thing could be at all relevant 20 years after launch. So with that, let's get into some games. We are going to start with Red Dead Redemption. This game is such a classic, and funny enough, it's actually the game that I discovered my console was failing on. I was running through the map like normal, and all of a sudden, textures stopped loading in. But now that I have the game installed locally, this is no longer a problem. And considering that all the files are located on an SSD, which are rapidly accessible, textures actually load in far faster than ever before. And in some cases, this actually makes texture pop-in a lot less noticeable in many of these games. Because trust me, it used to be really bad. And this right here is what I love about modifying consoles. And that's the ability to push games beyond the limit that they were originally able to be pushed, especially given the limitations of hard drives back in the early to mid 2000s. Next, we have Sleeping Dogs, which in my opinion is the biggest sleeper hit of the 7th generation. Many people did not play this game, but it was one of my favorites by far. It is so nostalgic, and honestly the combat system in this game is far better than most similar games that we even have today. And for that reason, it is such a shame that we never got a sequel. If you've never played this game, trust me, it needs to be on your list. But all in all, modifying the PS3, much like the Vita, was a ton of fun and a really great experience. It was a super easy process, and it was able to take what was otherwise a piece of e-waste with a dead optical drive and bring it completely back to life. And that is a major win in my book. If you like this video, please do leave a like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.